Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you to my History Reaction channel. Today we'll be taking a look at part 1 of World War I by Oversimplified. Yeah, you knew it had to be coming. There was zero chance I'd get very far into this channel without turning to Oversimplified. I have seen most of his videos in the past, a vast majority of them. There's 2 or 3 that I haven't seen yet. We'll get to those. But I thought I'd go through his whole catalog, starting with his oldest, and kind of work my way forward in chronological order. So this is one of his oldest, and I think it's a fun place to start. If you're not familiar with Oversimplified, you should be. So I'm including a link to the original content down in the description. If you like what he's doing here, please head over and support his channel. We do want to encourage him to keep making videos. He is among the best of the original history content video creators on YouTube. Easily one of the most popular. And rightfully so. So with that said, let's just go ahead and get into this. I'm going to try to add a lot of content, commentary. I'm not here to do oohs and ahs. I have seen this one before quite a while ago, but I have seen it before. My purpose isn't to ooh and ah and react. My purpose is to expand. He calls it Oversimplified because it is oversimplified. And there's a lot of detail that I can add. I've had a graduate level class in World War I and a undergraduate class. So hopefully I can add at least a little bit to this. Here we go. If not, I'm going to be embarrassed.
The world of 1914, a time of modern technology, culture, and fashion.
Yep.
Truly the height of civilization.
That's weird.
Let's have a war.
Sure.
Everyone knew a big war was coming. France wanted some stuff back that Germany had taken from it. Germany wanted to take more of everyone's stuff, and they were building a big sexy navy that was making the British uncomfortable.
Right.
These 2 empires thought they were really cool, but lots of different people who lived there.
Okay, the 2 empires that thought they were real cool, that's the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And at this point in history, they're both in serious decline. I've heard both referred to as the sick man of Europe. It typically applied to the Ottoman Empire, but I've heard it applied to Austro-Hungary as well. They were both in serious decline. They were hurting.
Didn't think it was so cool. And some of them had even been declaring independence with
right.
from Russia.
The Balkans. And people knew long before this war broke out that something was going to happen in the Balkans. Famously, what was it, Bismarck said that basically there's going to be a major conflict and it's going to be started by some damn fool thing in the Balkans. He was right. And yeah, Russia's up here. This is the era of balance of power where all the European powers are trying to kind of keep their strength relatively even to avoid serious conflict, but it's going to build up tensions that pretty much guarantee that kind of conflict.
Russia. Everyone was talking about each other behind each other's backs, throwing the fact that military technology had come a long way since the last major war.
That is true, but the technology has come a long way, but the strategy and tactics have not advanced much at all. And that is going to be a major factor in the early part of the World War I when there's so much death and destruction because nobody knows what they're doing with all this new toys.
And suddenly everyone was pretty eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary lived some Serbs and Bosnians who hated living in Austria-Hungary. So the Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes there for a nice drive in an open-top car.
Ferdinand, his wife Sophie, I believe it was, were next in line to the throne. Ferdinand was fairly sympathetic to the Serbians and some of these other people down here. Had he gotten to the throne, he probably would have been willing to listen to them. Unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen.
With his car's route published in advance, and that went just about as well.
It went about as well as it did for Kennedy.
As you'd expect. Some assassins were waiting for him along the way and threw bombs at his car, but they missed and blew up some officers behind him instead. So the Archduke goes into hiding, leaves Sarajevo, and the whole war never happens. Except no, the Archduke doesn't leave, but instead goes back out in the open-top car to visit the injured officers in hospital.
And I think this tells us a lot about what kind of person Archduke Ferdinand was. He could have gotten out of town, people were trying to kill him. Instead, people were injured by the assassins that were trying to kill him, and he turned around and goes back to visit them in the hospital. I think that says a lot about Ferdinand character.
The driver takes a wrong turn and by sheer coincidence gets stuck beside one of the failed assassins, who shoots him.
Gabriel Princip, yep.
Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed.
One of those little tiny twists in history that change everything. In his book 11/22/63, Stephen King frequently, several times in the book, says something to the effect that history turned on a dime. In other words, little things can make big changes. And this is a perfect example of that. One wrong turn changes everything.
About all this, and they think the Serbian government had something to do with it, which they might have.
Yeah.
So they go to their ally Germany and say, hey Germany, we're going to declare war on Serbia, and Germany is all for that. So Austria-Hungary send a big list of impossible demands to Serbia.
That's a big, the word impossible there is a big deal. Because, the demands that the Austro-Hungarian Empire sends to Serbia, they deliberately designed this list in a way that they know there's no way the Serbians are going to agree to all 10 items. They set it up that way because they want this war.
And when Serbia refuses,
as far as I know, they only refused 1 point, but that's all it took.
They declare war. Austria-Hungary and Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, who's friends with France, so they'll declare war on each other. Montenegro joins in too.
That was an interesting aside. Montenegro is like, hey, I want to play.
France and Britain also have a kind of alliance. So when France says, hey Britain, you got my back? Britain is like, maybe. And then they decide to stay out of it, which is great for Germany because Germany has a plan. They know that Russia is so big and clumsy that
this is the Schlieffen plan.
It will take them a while to get ready for war. So with this guy in charge, Germany will send all its troops into France at lightning speed while Russia's getting ready. Defeat.
That's a mistake. The general idea is Russia is so huge and their troops are spread out so far that it'll take them a long time to fully mobilize and get ready for war. That's kind of a mistake because a vast majority of Russia's population is over here in the western half, close to Europe. And as a result, a vast majority of their troops are also over here in the western side, close to Europe. So they couldn't fully mobilize fast. It's going to take them a while to get their troops over here, up here. But they've got more than enough manpower here to get into the war pretty quickly.
France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia, and then we all speak German and eat Pfefferpottast every day. Just one problem. France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border, and Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them through Belgium.
Oops.
Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around
France's
defenses. They're hoping Belgium will just kind of sit down and shut up, but they don't. They fight back, and they're pretty good too, so they slow the Germans down. What's worse is that Britain shows up, and they're pretty pissed that Germany's invading neutral countries.
Right.
So now Britain declares war on Germany. So Germany push on through Belgium and commit some atrocities along the way. They also wear spikes and sometimes skulls on their uniforms. So if you're trying to not look like the bad guys, good job. The Allies have a propaganda extravaganza, and this starts having an influence around the world, notably in America.
Right. Yeah, because of what the Germans do in Belgium, it's perfect propaganda material, and it does get people mad at the Germans.
The U.S. President Woodrow Wilson sees himself as a bit of a Jesus
figure. Oh, yeah, he does.
Spends most of the war trying to get everyone to just hug it out. But there's also a large population of ethnic Germans living in the United States, and when the war first broke out, they were like, yay, Germany. But now that they're committing atrocities in Belgium, they're less enthusiastic. Let's play Spot the French Soldier.
Okay. I think he's right there.
Easy, right? He's wearing a bright blue uniform with red trousers. And do you know who else spotted him easily too? The Germans. So when the French were slowly marching in columns through the countryside, the Germans easily tore them to shreds with their giant guns. All the nations involved in this war went in with an old school.
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier. The technology has changed. The way of fighting a war has not. This is still a period where they believed in the cult of the offensive. It is better to attack than to defend, and whenever you have the opportunity, attack, attack, attack. That may have worked previously, but now you've got things like machine guns for the first time in battle. And charging a machine gun nest is not necessarily a good idea. Now, defense can be effective as a strategy. Let them come to me, I'll mow them down with my artillery and my machine gun fire. But yeah, war is an adventure, bayonet charges are cool. Yeah, there were instances where they bayonet charged towards machine guns. You can probably imagine how well that worked. Cavalry is really effective. Yeah, they're still using cavalry. And yeah, it can still be used, but it's not nearly as useful as it used to be. This is the age of trenches, barricades, rapid fire machine guns, of artillery, horses spook, among other things. It's not, cavalry is going to be losing its effectiveness tremendously at this point in time. Dying for your country is awesome. Yeah, another big problem they had at this time was officers typically were in the front lines leading the charge. That's why a lot of these countries, notably Britain, for example, lost a huge percentage of their officers in the first months of the war because they were getting mowed down because they were charging machine gun nests and artillery lines. And warfare had changed. The weapons had changed, their mindset and their tactics had not. And this is going to be a problem in the early part of the war.
Mentality, and all of them had to update their uniforms and tactics a lot during the Great War, because this war was going to be like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Russia's ready for war, and way earlier than expected. Hey, Austria-Hungary, can you get on top of that? Oh yeah, sure, we've got this. Nope. So Germany has to send some troops back to the east to defend against the Russians. The chief of staff of the Austro-Hungarian army is this guy, and although he is handsome, he turns out not to be the best military strategist. Austria-Hungary constantly ignores Germany's advice, and then comes running back to Germany whenever they get in trouble. Austria-Hungary even gets its ass kicked by tiny Serbia, who repels all their invasion attempts at the start of the war. It's better news for Germany in the north, though, where they almost completely wipe out the Russian Second Army. Back on the Western Front, the Germans continue advancing and are in sight of Paris. At this point, anyone would be forgiven for thinking the Germans were going to get that quick victory after all, but then things start to go wrong. The French commander-in-chief knew something had to be done, and he ordered his armies to stop retreating. In the resulting battle, a gap opened up in the German line.
Right.
If a gap opens up, the enemy can use it to flank you from the side and behind, so the German armies have to retreat. The Allies launch a counterattack, so the Germans dig into defensive positions. The Allies do the same.
Yeah, and this is where the trench warfare really takes off.
Then both sides move north, trying to outflank each other along the way. When they reach the sea, they're in a stalemate with trench systems running the whole way from the coast to Switzerland, the beginning of trench warfare on the Western Front.
Yeah, and they show two lines there, but in reality, each side's going to have multiple lines so they can rotate people in and out, that kind of thing.
Here's how trench warfare works. Two opposing lines of trenches with no man's land in between. One side would pummel the other with hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, sometimes for days at a time. This had a huge psychological effect on the soldiers, leaving many shell-shocked.
Yeah, this is where the term shell shock comes from. In later wars, the name is going to change to a lot of other things. Battle fatigue, PTSD, so on and so forth.
Then, the attacking troops would leave their trenches and rush across no man's land. A muddy wet mass of shell craters and barbed wire. The defending trench would unleash machine gun fire on the attackers, inflicting thousands of casualties. The attackers would send wave after wave until either they gave up or the opposing trench was finally overrun. There would be months of fighting
But again, you're not going to have just one trench. There's going to be 2 or 3 lines of them at least, so that you can have a rotation. Some guys will be in the front trench, then they'll rotate to the back trench to recuperate a little bit, then they'll kind of advance back up toward the front.
Deaths of thousands in order to gain a few meters or kilometers of land.
Yep.
Living in the trenches was hard work too. Corpses, mud that could swallow you whole, pools of poisonous water, rats, disease, the smell. It's insane that millions of soldiers put up with these conditions, and commanders ordered them to do so for years.
All right, so I guess that's it for part 1. So we will be back again tomorrow for part 2, and we'll see where it goes from here. Thank you for joining me. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider coming back for part 2 tomorrow. Until then, thank you for joining me. See you next time. Bye-bye.